So handouts on the back. Freshly minted. Got everything.
This is your final appearance, right?
No, next week.
Oh, you've got next week?
I got Deuteronomy. And then it'll be 1 Kings, I think, the widow of Zarephath with Elijah. And I guess you'll have that one, unless we get some volunteers.
We love volunteers, don't we?
We love volunteers, so Gordon loves teaching, but, you know, this actually takes some time putting these together, doesn't it?
Yes.
You know, we get some materials on there, but I liken that material, I don't know if you're the same, to hamburger helper.
Yes.
In other words, before you present it to the class, you need to add a lot of beef.
Oh, yeah.
Because all they do is give you the skeleton or something, you know. So, and also for some, especially, they assume that the class is going to talk for about 20 minutes. Yeah. I attended a class where my son's in Netherwood Park. I think the teacher introduced the class and then he got out of the way. Had a lot of people that like to talk. Okay. So that's good, I guess. So today is this quarter. So hello to everyone here. Hello to everyone, Zoom and YouTube. This quarter is responding to God's grace and faithful in consequences. So this is really part 2. Last week we did Numbers 13 through verse 24. So today we'll continue and go to 14:20. So today. So that's what we'll do. And of course, Numbers 13 is where Moses, they're up there at Kadesh Barnea, and they're getting ready to go in the land, and they get there, hey, why don't we explore it first and see what it looks like? Moses says, sounds like a good idea. And then the Lord says, go ahead and do it. But Moses, you pick the spies, and you pick, what they're going to do. So he picks them. So they pick 12 of them, one from each of the 12 tribes, with the exception of the Levites, because when they did the numbering, they weren't counted because the Lord says they're not getting land. The Lord is their inheritance. So he picks them out, and they picked 12 men who were leaders, respected leaders in each of the 12 tribes. So they're the ones they sent out. So here's our key verse. Comes from chapter 14 of Numbers, verse 19. Forgive. In accordance with your great love, this is the Lord speaking to the Israelites. In accordance with your great love, forgive the sin of those people, just as you have pardoned them from the time they left Egypt until now. And they needed a lot of pardoning as they travel from Egypt to the land that the Lord has been saving for them, the land to which the Lord had sent Abraham over 400 years earlier. So here's our word, intercession. Remember, first lesson we had complaints. Then we had motivation. So today is intercession. Dictionary definition, it's a pleading with one party on behalf of another party, usually with a view to obtaining help for that other party. In the Bible, intercession is usually one person praying for another person, or perhaps even praying for themselves. This is Eli speaking to his sons, who were not good men. They were priests, and they were not doing a good job. They were taking advantage of the people who brought their sacrifices. And Eli's telling his sons, if someone sins against the man, God will mediate for him. But if someone sins against the Lord, who can intercede for him? Perhaps Moses. In fact, Moses does. Moses intercedes for the Lord, to the Lord for them quite often. Here's some examples of intercession. Of course, Abraham tried to intercede for Sodom. He says, Lord, if there's 50, if there's 40, if there's 10. Pharaoh's cupbearer. Joseph interpreted his dream. And he says, remember me. Get me out of here. He finally does 2 years later. Jonathan intercedes for David when his father Saul is trying to kill him. Abigail intercedes with David for her husband Nabal, because David is going to come and wipe him out and the entire household. David intercedes for his infant son he has with Bathsheba. King of Syria intercedes for Naaman, his general, who has leprosy. He sends a letter. He writes a letter introducing him and say, please help him. And then Naaman takes it and gives it to the king of Israel and says, he thinks I'm God. And then Elijah hears about it and then he cures him. The elders of the Jews intercede to Jesus and to heal the centurion's servant. He says, Lord, he loves our nation. He built our synagogue. And then Paul intercedes to Philemon for Onesimus, and then Paul intercedes for himself to get rid of that thorn in the flesh removed. So, those are unsuccessful. Sodom gets wiped out, the infant son dies after 7 days, and the Lord says, my grace is sufficient for you. Now, Moses also intercedes. All of these are to the Lord. He intercedes for the Israelites, the golden calf incidents. He intercedes for Miriam when she and Aaron challenge Moses' leadership. And Lord strikes her with leprosy. Moses intercedes. Miriam's leprosy is cured, but she remains unclean for 7 days and has to stay outside the camp. Moses intercedes for Aaron, golden calf incident, and then Moses intercedes for himself. And we'll see that in a moment. That one is unsuccessful. So interceding for yourself doesn't work, at least in these two instances.
God does hear and answer prayers. Sometimes it's the answer that doesn't suit us.
Yes, it's answered. Okay, the golden calf. We'll look at that incident. That was in Exodus there, chapter 20. After Moses has come down, Moses has been gone. He's been up on the mountain 40 days to receive the commandments on the tablets. And then Joshua is waiting for him halfway up, and then he says, what's going on? There's a sound of war in the camp. Moses comes down, sees what's going on, and bye-bye tablets. They're gone. So the next day after this, Moses says to the people, you have sinned a great sin. And now I will go up to the Lord. Perhaps I can make atonement for your sin. Now, if you want to find out what he did, you need to go to the book of Deuteronomy. We're going to look at Deuteronomy next week. He says, I lay prostrate before the Lord as before 40 days and 40 nights. He had just come down from being up there for 40 days and 40 nights. I neither ate bread nor drank water because of all the sin that you had committed in doing what was evil, or Young's literal have, in doing the evil thing, which is worshiping someone, something other than God. Doing what was evil in the sight of the Lord to provoke him to anger. So he was up there for 40 days and 40 nights. He comes down, has to go back up for 40 days and 40 nights. Okay, that's Deuteronomy 9:18. That's for the people. So, next verse, we're going to look at Aaron. For I was afraid of the anger and hot displeasure that the Lord bore against you, you Israelites. Or actually, this is 38 years later, against your ancestors, against your parents, so that he was ready to destroy you. But the Lord listened to me that time also. So that worked. So we got Aaron, we got the Israelites, we had Miriam, and the Lord was angry with Aaron that he was ready to destroy him. So No Aaron. I prayed for Aaron also at that time, at the same time. So the Lord heard him, interceded, and the Lord did not destroy or kill Aaron. Keep in mind, the Lord did kill Aaron's sons, didn't he? Nadab and Abihu, for offering unauthorized fire before the Lord. So for himself. And I pleaded with the Lord at that time, saying, O Lord God, you have only begun to show your servant your greatness and your mighty hand. For what God is there in heaven or on earth who can do such works and mighty acts as yours? So he's starting his request with praise, praising the Lord. And now, this is what he wants. Please, please, Lord, let me go over and see the good land beyond the Jordan. He's been working for 40 years here. All that time. You know, this was a job he didn't ask for, a job he didn't want. A thankless job. Now, he knows the Lord has told him he's not going. Aaron's not going. But the Lord was angry with me because of you. Look who he blames. And would not listen to me. And the Lord said to me, enough from you. Do not speak to me of this matter again. Enough. How about, well, my grace is sufficient for you. No. He was a little harsher here with Moses than the Lord was with Paul. So let's pick up the report of the spies. Remember, they came back. They went to the land. They were there 40 days, went up all the way to the northern part of the territory that they were going to receive. Okay, at the end of 40 days, they, the spies, returned from spying out the land, and they came to Moses and Aaron and to all the congregation of the people in the wilderness of Paran at Kadesh. Now, last week we showed a slide of what Paran looks like. It looks sort of like the surface of Mars or something. I mean, there were rocks there. Not a plant was in sight. They brought back word to them and to all the congregation and showed them the fruit of the land. And they told him, Moses, we came to the land to which you sent us. It flows with milk and honey, and this was its fruit. And last week we showed that big cluster of grapes that they had and showed, yes, they still exist there in that region where they gathered the grapes. So they still have them today. So flowing with milk and honey. Now, milk and honey is found, the phrase milk and honey is found 20 times in Scripture. First mention of milk and honey is at the burning bush. Lord speaking to Moses from the burning bush says, I'm going to send you to a land flowing with milk and honey. And in the first time mentioned, Exodus 3:8, last time in Ezekiel. And 20 times and 19 times flowing with milk and honey. One time flows with milk and honey. So we always have the flowing that goes along with it. So a little bit description. This is from the Lexham Geographic Commentary on the Pentateuch. The land flowing with milk and honey is not a fertile and lush paradise, but a faith-testing and faith-proving ground that was different from both Egypt and the wilderness. So it wasn't fertile all the time. When God calls Abram in Ur and Haran, he was in Mesopotamia. Another name for that was the Fertile Crescent, the Tigris and Euphrates River. Egypt has the Nile. The land flowing with milk and honey has brooks and springs. So it doesn't do well in a famine, in a drought. So it would flow with essential and non-essential commodities when the rain came. Essential commodities were dietary staples. That's your bread, that's your grains, and milk. Non-essential commodities is dietary luxuries. Sweetener, honey. You know, that was a luxury. You wanted your milk, you wanted your bread. So those would only come when the rain came. They were dependent. And the rain would come when Israel demonstrated covenantal loyalty. Only then would the promised land achieve all that it promised to deliver. So you had to have the rain. And we see where God emphasizes this in Leviticus. It's conditional. If you walk in my statutes, and if you observe my commandments and do them, then I will give you your rains in their season, and the land shall yield its increase, and the trees of the field shall yield their fruit. So you have to obey the Lord for the rains to come, and without the rains, it's not a land flowing with milk and honey. It's not like Mesopotamia with the Tigris and Euphrates, and Egypt, of course, has that Nile. But it's interesting, the three famines, God calls Abraham, Genesis 12, 1-2. He gets settled, Genesis 12, 6-9. He's settled in the land, Genesis 12, 10. There's a severe famine and he leaves, goes to Egypt. Isaac, there was a severe famine. The Lord told him, don't go to Egypt. So he goes to the land of the Philistines. And then Genesis 41:54, that's the famine during the time of Joseph. And it's interesting, that famine affected not only the land of promise, it also affected Egypt. And here's an archaeological find, clay beehive from about 900 BC. It's about 500 years later. But it does show that they did keep bees at that time, or a little bit later. Okay, Moses expands on the idea. What does that mean? Milk and honey. Deuteronomy 8:7-10. This is Lord speaking to the Israelites. These are the ones that are actually going to get to go into the land. These are the ones who were 20 or younger at the time of the spies. So they get to go. And Moses is saying, for the Lord your God is bringing you into a good land, a land of brooks of water, of fountains and springs flowing out of the valleys and hills, a land of wheat and barley, there's your bread, of vines and fig trees and pomegranates, honey, a land in which you will eat bread without scarcity, in which you will lack nothing, a land in which stones are iron, and whose hills you can dig copper, and you shall eat and be full, and you shall bless the Lord your God for the good land that he is giving you. So there's an explanation, a fuller explanation of what this land will have for these people. So they're happy to go in there, and you can imagine why the Lord is sad that he's not getting to go in there, that he's not going to get to experience this with them. Okay, so the land flows with milk and honey, and these are the 10 spies giving their report. However, the people who dwell on the land are strong, and the cities are fortified and very large. Well, that'll be good when you get them, because those will be your cities. And besides, we saw the descendants of Anak there. Those are the tall people. And the Amalekites dwell in the land of the Negev. The Hittites, the Jebusites, the Amorites dwell in the hill country. And the Canaanites dwell by the sea among the Jordan. Now there's a handout on the Amalekites. The Amalekites were the first nation that they faced, aggressive nation, and they actually attacked them. And that's on your handout there. Why the Lord didn't care for the Amalekites, and why, after they get their king, his first marching orders are to destroy the Amalekites, because they attacked you, they attacked your caravans, your weak members when you were in the wilderness. But Caleb quieted the people before Moses and said, let us go up at once and occupy it, for we are able to overcome it. Then the men who had gone up with him said, we are not able to go up against it, for they are stronger than we are. Whoa. So, would it have been better if they hadn't seen that? Have any of you been on a whitewater rafting trip? My first whitewater rafting trip was here in Colorado many years ago, but we left out of Salida, and it was on the Arkansas River. We did the all-day trip, like 25 miles, and we'd had a good snowpack, so it was going pretty good. So we'd stop for lunch, and and then we got to the Royal Gorge, and he pulled us over. We went up to this high rise. We were going to scout out the land. And I saw these rapids, and we were saying, oh no, we're going to die. Say, can we just go on ahead? There were 2 rafts, and we didn't have paddles. You know, they paddled. The water was going pretty good, so we didn't need to paddle. They just steered it. So they wouldn't let us, so we had to go through. And once we went through, it wasn't nearly as bad as we thought. The only thing we had to fear was fear itself. So sometimes you're better off not knowing what's ahead. They are stronger than we are. Is that the truth? Let's go to Deuteronomy 7:1. When the Lord your God brings you into the land you are entering to possess and drives out before you many nations, Hittites, Girgashites, Amorites, Canaanites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites, 7 nations larger and stronger than you. We need to put in 7 nations collectively larger and stronger than you. That's what most people think. If you had the handout from a couple weeks ago, it said about 2.5 million people, Israelites. Well, Jebusites, they just lived in the village of Jerusalem. There weren't 2.5 million Jebusites. So all these combined are stronger than you are. But they're not stronger than you and the Lord. You got to remember the Lord. Who brought them across the Red Sea? The Lord. So, they brought to the people of Israel a bad report. The bad report was the majority report that they had spied out, saying, the land through which we have gone to spy it out is a land that devours its inhabitants. It devours, it eats up its inhabitants. And all the people that we saw are of great height. Well, that's not true. The Anakites were the people of great height. The other ones weren't. So they're exaggerating a little bit, but you do that when you want to try and make your point, isn't it? There we saw the Nephilim, the sons of Anak. So the Anakites descended from the Nephilim, who came from the Nephilim. And we seem to be like ourselves. We considered ourselves like grasshoppers. Not that little kitten that saw itself as a Bengal tiger. We saw ourselves as grasshoppers. And so we seem to them. We seem like grasshoppers to us, so I'm sure we seem like grasshoppers to them. Now here's a passage on the Nephilim. This is from Genesis 6:4. This is before the flood. Nephilim were on the earth in those days before the flood, and also afterwards, when the sons of God came to the daughters of men, that they bore children to them. These were the mighty men who were of old, the men of renown. Now, only 2 reasons I saw how they could have been around after the flood was either, some say, well, the flood wasn't regional, didn't cover the entire earth, and the second one was that these sons of God came to the daughters of men after the flood also and did this same thing all over again. So there's a nice depiction there of a nice grasshopper. But what happens when you get a million grasshoppers together?
Wipe out.
Yeah. Numbers chapter 14. So cries of anguish, verses 1 through 4, concerned leaders, courageous leaders, and cries of anger. Then all the congregation raised a loud cry, and the people wept that night. And all the people of Israel grumbled against Moses and Aaron, the whole congregation. So here we have that all again. The whole congregation said to them, would that we had died in the land of Egypt, or that we had died in the wilderness. Didn't they say this earlier?
Yes.
Would that we had died in the land of Egypt rather than starve out here. You know, we had melons, we had onions, we had leeks, our pots were full of meat and everything. Would that we had died there. They said this while they were in the wilderness, and now, or that we had died in the wilderness. Now the wilderness sounds good, doesn't it? We'd rather be in the wilderness than go over there. So what are they afraid of? Why is the Lord bringing us into this land to fall by the sword? So first it was starvation, now to fall by the sword. So, Israelites didn't have any swords, did they? Remember when David was fighting Goliath? Yeah, he said only Saul and Jonathan had swords. That was later, a long time later. So they were poorly equipped compared to the people they were fighting. Our wives and our little ones will become a prey. Well, your little ones are the only one that's going to get to go over there. Sort of ironic, isn't it? Would it not be better for us to go back to Egypt? And they said to one another, let us choose a leader and then go back to Egypt. Whoa. How would Egypt react to their return? Welcome them? Yeah. We want to go back. How many times have you heard somebody say, if so-and-so gets elected president, I'm going to Canada? Well, it's not that easy to get into Canada compared to the United States. They don't have open borders. Okay, would it not be better for us to go back to Egypt? Well, a lot of Pharaoh's army did get wiped out, didn't it? Maybe they could go back and conquer Egypt, but I don't think they would exactly be, they wouldn't get a triumphal entry coming back.
Egypt would have a lot of widows.
Yeah.
That would be angry.
Yeah, be mad at them. Plus, they gave them all their stuff when they left, their jewelry and all that stuff, and gold that they used to make the golden calf. Let us choose a leader and go back to Egypt. That's interesting. Let us choose a leader. Well, you already have a leader. Your leader is the Lord. His prophet is Moses. Now, they want to go back because what? They're facing war. Now, this is when they left, Exodus 13:17. When Pharaoh let the people go, not of his own volition, he had to. God did not lead them by the land of the Philistines. That's the land along the coast, although that was the near way. But God said, lest the people change their mind when they see war and return. So he didn't want to go that way because they might change their mind. So they went a different way, and what'd they do? They wanted to go back to Egypt anyway, so that didn't make any difference. So here's the land here. Let me turn around here. So this is the way remember this Etham, this place right in here. We talked about that. They camped there when they came out. They could have just gone up this way. But instead, they went down this way, all the way down here, Mount Sinai. I got the Ten Commandments. And then they're up, and they're right up in here. And look who's there. Amalek. So they got to go through the land. So if they went the other way, maybe they could have missed Amalek there. There's another reason, though, they didn't go that way. This is God speaking to Moses at the burning bush. He said, the Lord said to Moses, but I will be with you, and this shall be the sign for you, that I have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you shall serve God on this mountain. The mountain is Mount Horeb, which is another thing for Sinai. So the Lord is saying, even before Moses goes into the land, that when you come out, you got to go down that long way. So that's what they did. And then they stayed at Mount Sinai there for a while to receive the commandments. So there's that. Did they choose another leader? That an easy question? Is it an easy answer? Well, you won't find it in Exodus. You won't find it in Leviticus or Numbers or Deuteronomy. There is an answer. Good old Nehemiah gives us the answer. This is a prayer of Nehemiah when he's back in Jerusalem, trying to build that wall, rebuild the wall. But they, our fathers, acted presumptuously and stiffened their neck. How many times were they called stiff-necked? And they did not obey your commandments. They refused to obey and were not mindful of the wonders that you performed among them, bringing them out of the land, the 10 plagues and everything you did, the water that you provided, the manna. But they stiffened their neck and appointed a leader to return them. So yes, they did. So thank you, Nehemiah, for the answer to that. Then Moses and Aaron fell on their faces before the assembly of the congregation of the people of Israel. So now, before we had Caleb, now we got Joshua and Caleb. So Moses and Aaron fell on their knees before all the assembly of the congregation of the people of Israel. That's a lot of people. And Joshua the son of Nun and Caleb the son of Jephunneh, who were among those who spied out the land, tore their clothes. Okay. Well, we know their clothes didn't wear out, we're told, but I don't think God protected them if you want to tear them. And said to the congregation of the people of Israel, so the land which we passed through to spy it out is an exceedingly good land. Well, so far they agree with the other 10, don't they? We got an if here, if the Lord delights in us, he will bring us into this land and give it to us, a land that flows with milk and honey. We found out in Deuteronomy what all that entails, the brooks, and the grains and the fruits and all that stuff. Everything you need to eat, to live well. Only do not rebel against the Lord, and do not fear the people of the land, for they are bread for us. What did the 10 say? They're going to devour us. And what are they saying? We're going to devour them. Their protection is removed from them. Now, I wonder, what does that mean? The only thing I could find was that God had been protecting them up to this time because they were the caretakers of the land. They took care of the land, kept out the wild animals, and all that produce they're going to eat, they took care of it. So the Lord was sort of with them for that time. And the Lord is with us. Their protection is removed, so their protection has gone away from them, and the Lord is now with us. He's going to help us. So, God's intention, Numbers 14:10 through 12, the glorious presence. Then all the congregation said to stone them with stones. But the glory of the Lord appeared at the tent of the meeting to all the people of Israel. Normally we think of the Shekinah glory. This was Kavod glory, so I'm not sure what that is. The glory of the Lord appeared to the people at the tent of meeting. Now we know that there was the cloud and the fire. On the day that the tabernacle was set up, the cloud covered the tabernacle and the tent of the testimony. And at evening it was over the tabernacle like the appearance of fire until morning. So it was always. The cloud covered it by day and the appearance of fire by night. So this glory of the Lord is something other than the cloud, because the cloud was there all the time. And the Lord said to Moses, how long will this people despise me? How long will they not believe in me in spite of all the signs that I have done among them? How long will they not believe in me in spite of all the signs that I have done? That reminds you of something? New Testament? This is from John. Though he had done so many signs before him, before them, they still did not believe him. So it doesn't change, does it? The Lord says, I will strike them with pestilence, it's like plague, and disinherit them, and I will make of you a nation greater and mightier than they. This isn't the first time he said that. He said that right after the golden calf incident back in Exodus 32. So this is twice the Lord said that. But, we got a but. So he's going to start over with Moses. And what happens with Moses? Moses only is in good graces for 6 chapters. Then Moses isn't going to get to go. And the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, because you, plural, because y'all did not believe in me to uphold me as holy in the eyes of the people of Israel, therefore you too shall not bring this assembly into the land that I will give them. So if the Lord wipes out Israel and Moses and Aaron aren't going in, what is it?
Here's the consequence.
Yeah. Moses' mediation. But Moses said to the Lord, then the Egyptians, so he's sort of appeasing, he's going to use some logic here with God to say, well, if you do this, so Moses is now going to do the if then. But Moses said to the Lord, then, here's our then the Egyptians will hear it, for you brought up this people in your might from among them, and they will tell the inhabitants of this land, they have heard that you, O Lord, are in the midst of this people. For you, O Lord, are seen face to face. They are counting that when he appears, that glory as face to face, though not literally. Even Moses didn't get to do that. And your cloud stands over them, and you go before them in a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. Now, if you kill this people as one man, then the nations will hear. Then the nations who have heard your fame will say, it is because the Lord is not able to bring this people into the land that he swore to give them, and he has killed them in the wilderness. So you're going to this is going to make you look bad, Lord, to all these other nations. And now please let the power of the Lord be great as you have promised, saying, then the nations who have heard of your fame. So who are some of those nations? Let's go to Jericho. Let's go to Rahab. This is Rahab speaking, for we have heard how the Lord dried up the Red Sea, how you defeated the 2 kings of the Amorites, the king of Sihon and the king of Og. And as soon as we heard it, our hearts melted, and there was no spirit left in any man because of you. For the Lord your God, he is God of heavens above and on earth beneath. How's that for a statement of faith? Remember when Jesus would say, when he encounters a Gentile, I have not seen such great faith in Israel. So she had more faith than they did. This is continuing Moses speaking. The Lord is slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love, forgiving the iniquity and the transgression, but he will by no means clear the guilty, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children to the 3rd, 4th generation. Please pardon the iniquity of the people, according to the greatness of your steadfast love, just as you have forgiven this people from Egypt until now. So we have some repeated words here. Forgiving iniquity, and because of his steadfast love. Do this because of your steadfast love. Forgive the iniquity, please, Lord. So, remember this from Jacob's blessings of his sons. The scepter shall not depart from Judah. Moses was a Levite. So if the Lord kills everyone, then that prophecy will be no more, will it? The Messiah would have to be a Levite. Then the Lord said, I have pardoned your iniquity. according to your word. This is kind of odd. The Lord doing something according to a human's word, as opposed to a human doing something according to the Lord's word. But truly as I live, and as the earth shall be filled with the glory of the Lord. So what is that? Truly as I live, and all the earth be filled. This is God taking an oath upon himself. He swears upon himself. Now this is his oath. None of these men who have seen my glory, that's at verse 10, the glory of the Lord appeared, and my signs that I did in Egypt in the wilderness, and yet have put me to the test these 10 times, and have not obeyed my voice, shall see the land that I swore to give to their fathers, and none of those who despised me shall see it. These 10 times. Now, if you go back and try and find out these 10 times, you probably won't find them. That's a figure of speech. You know, like in the New Testament, shall I forgive them 7 times? 10 times was a sign of completeness. We see here, this is Jacob speaking to his wives, Leah and Rachel. You know that I've served your father with all my strength, that your father has cheated me and changed my wages. How many times? 10 times. But God did not permit him to harm me. Then we go to Job. Job speaking to his 3 friends. How long will you torment me and break me in pieces with words? These 10 times you have cast reproach upon me. So 10 times is just sort of you've done it a lot of times. So what happened to the 10 spies?
They got excluded.
We go to Numbers 14, still same chapter, different verses. And the men who Moses sent to spy out the land, who returned and made all the congregation grumble against him by bringing up the bad about the land, the men who brought up the bad report of the land died by plague before the Lord. Of those men who went to spy out the land, only Joshua the son of Nun and Caleb the son of Jephunneh remained alive. So those 10 men died. So if they're going to choose a new leader, doesn't it make sense that it would be one of those 10? Because they were already, leaders of the tribe. So it's probably one of those 10. So that new leader got wiped out. The importance of intercession, prayer, and thought to remember. Okay, the Lord's anger against Israel was justified. But another theme is intercession. Ultimately, the intercessor who stands up for us is God's own Son. He intercedes for us. Okay. Who are some people for which the Bible tells us to intercede? Read the following scriptures and indicate the people for whom we are to pray. Now, I know on Wednesday night we get people to read from the scriptures, but if I ask Gordon to read it, he doesn't have a microphone. You're going to have a hard time hearing back there, aren't you? Ralph, would you hear him? Probably not. He's shaking his head no. So I'm going to read it. So 2 Chronicles. So the question is, for whom are we to pray? 2 Chronicles 7:14. If my people who are called by my name humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and heal their land. My people who are called by my name humble themselves, pray and seek my name and turn from my wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and forgive them. Our nation, our people. Matthew 5:44, our enemies. But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. Doesn't that go with Wednesday evenings? Love those you hate. Is the bell going to be rung here? 1 Timothy 2:1-2.
Go for it.
Our leaders. Colossians 1:9-12 is pray for our fellow believers, for our, people who are with you this morning here, fellow believers. Ephesians, our spiritual leaders, our elders. minister, and then finally ourselves. Pray for ourselves. So here's your homework. Pray for 2 this week. Our nation, how about our election? Our election. Okay, next week is Obedient Faith, Deuteronomy chapter 4. And we'll do, of course, a little bit background on Deuteronomy and some background on who was Caleb. Who was Caleb? A little background on him. And that's all.